All right, ladies and gentlemen, right now on the Business Bully podcast, one of my favorite podcasts is a brother who continues to push the boundaries of what on-demand audio can be. Amazing dude out of Maryland. Give it up from the Normalized podcast for my main man, CJ. CJ, what up, bro?
Hey, what's going on, Dave? How you doing? Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Really
man,
appreciate it.
it's an absolute pleasure. So for people who aren't familiar with your show, can you kind of break it down for them?
Oh, yeah, man. So my podcast, Normalized Podcast, as you said, normalizedpodcast.com. It's about my journeys of a Black man trying to feel normal in my own skin. So in my show, I basically tell stories of my life that are very raw. I'm very honest, very thoughtful. And sometimes they're not comfortable situations or conversations, but I tell these stories about my life, trying to explain why I am the way I am. And I really wanted to do it to show a different side of Black men. I think a lot of times when they talk about sports, drugs, and entertainment, we get stereotyped a lot. And we don't see other sides of Black men who are just people walking by you on a regular basis. We have our fears, we have our pains, we have things that make us happy, that make us sad. So I really wanted to tell a different story of Black men. And so that's kind of the basis of the podcast. Again, it's all personal. It's all about my life and my role and decisions that I made, and have I held myself accountable? When are others to blame? Stuff like that. So it's a really personal podcast.
So what made you decide that, okay, I want to get out here and tell my stories and kind of be, I don't want to use the word the alternative Black man, but give a different spin, because like, I'm not trying to be funny when I say that, but blackness comes, and this blackness comes in many, many forms.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and I think that, we all have a few common denominators that draw us. Our skin, the fact that at any given moment any of us can get killed by the cops. Not so much because you more light skinned than most of us. But in all seriousness, I don't think blackness is a monolith. And so, what made you say, okay, this is why I want to tell my truth?
And you know what? You're absolutely right. And a lot of times people think that we're just lemmings and that we are all the same, and we're not. We're so eclectic. We're different. We're individual people. But the reason why I started it was I'm an alcoholic. And part of me in my recovery was going to my therapist and talking to him about my issues. And my therapist had mentioned to me, he was like, you got a really interesting story that really needs to be told. And a lot of times when people give you compliments, you just think that they're trying to gas you, especially if you're insecure. You think, they're just bullshitting me. He's just trying to take my money, blah, blah, blah. So you kind of just dismiss it. You don't learn to actually take people for the word and think that maybe they're telling you the truth. And then about a week later, one of my close friends actually said the same thing. He's like, you got a really good story. Maybe you should do a podcast. And up to that point, I didn't know what a podcast was. So I had to really go out and do some research on it. And I was a very introverted person, even though it may not seem like it. So I never did anything with Facebook. I really wasn't technologically savvy. I had no social media presence. And so I did some research on some podcasts. And one of the things I learned about podcasts, especially within our culture, obviously you being completely different, we talk about a lot of the same things. Now you talk about business, you have a niche and you are about how you can basically grow your business. But a lot of us just seem to talk about, just pop culture, what LeBron James was doing or what some rapper was doing. And I wanted to show that we are so much different than what we see on TV and maybe what some of these podcasts, the dominating podcasts, talk about. So I really wanted to be different. And when I hear people talk, a lot of times I'm thinking, well, what gives you the authority to speak on such matters? How should I trust you? Why should I believe you? I don't know anything about you. So with my approach, I figured, well, if I share who I am, I'll make myself vulnerable. And therefore, the listener is a little more inclined to believe me and have a little more faith and trust in the words that I said. So that was kind of the basis of it. And you're absolutely right. I can't agree with you more, man. We are all different, but we do have shared experiences. And you're right. I mean, being killed by the cops, that's something that's real no matter where we are. I sometimes don't like when people get on Clarence Thomas, because even though I'm no fan of his whatsoever, I still feel that when it comes down to the get down, the world still looks at him like a nigger. And and I can empathize if there's one thing I can empathize with him, and maybe that's the only thing, is perhaps that perception. So we are very different people, but that was kind of the thought process behind it.
Did your ass just put on a cape for Clarence Thomas?
I know, right? Yo. It's hard. Right. I know. There's nothing I agree with him on. But if somebody were to call him that, could you not empathize with that? How that may make him feel?
Here's why I don't empathize with that.
Okay.
Because even if you look at the root definition of the word, he's ignorant as fuck. So if you just look at the word nigger, and I hate water, I absolutely abhor the word.
Yeah.
But the common clinical definition is an ignorant person.
Right.
And he's ignorant to how black people operate.
Yeah.
And Carson, another one.
I can understand that. I know.
On top of that, let's just take emotions out of it. Clarence Thomas has consistently voted against the best interests of his people after replacing the most influential civil rights leader who has ever stepped foot on a bench named Thurgood Marshall. I have a problem with that. Just like, and I'm not a huge Cornel West fan, but every once in a while he drops something that I like.
Right.
It's kind of like I'm not a huge Nas fan, but I like Illmatic.
Right.
Just because you my color don't make you my kind.
No, and I'm not, and you know what? I'm not even saying that. I agree. There's nothing with him that I agree on. I think the only thing is I was saying that I can empathize with that perspective of him being black. Whether he acknowledges that or not, I can't control that.
Right.
I agree. I mean, there's nothing about that man. He's on line with Carson, and there's nothing that I can really agree with him on. But there is that shared experience. And so whether he acknowledges that, I agree. I appreciate you dropping some knowledge like that, man, talking about Thurgood. I'm here in Baltimore, so, obviously he has a big presence here.
Yeah, no, I'm here for Thurgood. And you know what I love about Thurgood the most?
What's that? Chadwick
Boseman. Because we didn't trust light-skinned brothers to play Thurgood the right way.
Yo, man, what's the deal with the light skin, man? We're back in. We're back in, man. We're back in.
I know y'all are making a strong comeback. Ever since Common got that Oscar, y'all been back up in there.
Hey, man, Redbone, man. So it's all good.
Here you go. But no, in all seriousness, with Clarence Thomas, one of the things that bothers people about Clarence Thomas is that he doesn't, and I'm not going to stay with Clarence Thomas long, but I'm transitioning. Right. Segue here. This is where it gets
cool. Here we go.
Clarence Thomas has not really supported black people as a whole. And because of that, everything that he's done has been scrutinized. Yeah. So with that, he came in to confirmation, even though allegedly sexually harassing Anita Hill. And I think it's more the Chris Rock version, which is, sexual harassment is only sexual harassment if you're unattractive. And having said that, then you find out that, it's not and hear me on this, and don't get mad, but I got to spit this truth.
All right.
You cannot be upset when someone says, well, no wonder Clarence Thomas isn't down for black people. He's laid up with a white woman. Now, as a man who is married to a white woman, how do you feel justified in speaking about your black issues? Like, how do you, I can come home, right, and be like, yo, yeah, I mean, this shit happened to me today. Ain't that crazy? And I don't have to watch what I say or explain context or say when I grew up in 1996, this was how I felt because this happened. I don't have to give that context because everything around me is black.
Right. So how do I do it?
Yeah, for real. Because there's a lot of people. It's the last part I said, and I'm going to let you have the floor. There's a lot of people who have an issue with black folks marrying others and still, and I'm not saying that you're going out here and being an activist, but still talking about, blackness, black issues, things of that nature, while laid up with, as they put so eloquently in Black Panther, a colonizer.
Yeah. I mean... Yeah, for those who don't know, obviously, my wife is white. And I talk about that in one of my episodes, which I call Black Life, White Life. I got that twisted. Yeah, Black Life, White Wife. Sorry about that. When I come home, I talk about my life to my wife, just like you talk about your life to your wife. And even though my wife is white, if she came home and talked about certain things, there's certain things I can't empathize with it purely because she's a woman. Just like there's certain things she can't empathize with me purely because I'm a man. So let's just take that one step further. There's some things that she may not understand because I'm a black male. And that's cool. She's a principal in Baltimore City. Her students, I would say, are about 90% black. I've been with her 15 years now, and she's been my biggest supporter. And through the ups and downs, she's learned who I am, and she loves me for who I am, and I love her for who she is. It's not always easy. You know, we fell in love with each other. It's probably harder sometimes with maybe family members. There's a cultural difference. There's definitely a cultural difference. But we're just people when it comes down to it. And honestly, she tells me that when she listens to me, it gives her a deeper understanding when she works with her students at her school. When she works with the parents, she's able to empathize and understand them a little more, I think, because of me, versus if she was just married to a white man. So, you know, we're not perfect. Marriage is marriage, regardless of the race. And it's not an easy process, but I've been with her for so long, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect us that much. And race doesn't define me on a daily basis. I mean, I know it's a part of me on a daily basis, but it doesn't come into play every day of my life, perhaps consciously, maybe subconsciously it does. And maybe with some of the social structures that are there, it does. But it doesn't like overwhelm me on a daily basis. And when I talk about blackness, and it's not necessarily some pro-black or anti-white or anything like that, it's just the experience, my experiences through black eyes. I mean, and that's all it is. I'm not saying everything, because what I don't want to do when I talk about this, I think sometimes as blacks, we tend to, and actually I like when I read some of the stuff that you talk about, you write, or you say, we play the victim too much. I think if we can hunker down sometimes, we understand the rules aren't fair. We understand the game is rigged, but there's still ways for us to navigate through this game, help ourselves out, help our family out, help others out. And not being victim and worried about what other people are saying or doing, focus on what we have to do to be productive members of society. It's not going to be fair. It never was. But I think that's what makes us unique and strong. We've been able to understand that, deal with it and still thrive and be successful. But there's still a lot that we have to do.
All right. So, how am I going to put this? Here's the thing.
You struggling, man? You struggling?
It's not that I'm struggling.
All right.
It's not a struggle. It's just that, you know, wisdom and age teach me to say things in a way that gets the point across without riling the situation up. So I'm a big believer in pauses. It's actually, you know, one of the weird things about me. I have a slight speech impediment, and sometimes I pause. But in this case, it's not that. In this case, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Your blackness doesn't necessarily define you, but it does. And here's the thing, right? You got black children.
I do.
Now, there are those, and I have some of them in my family, and the shit pisses me off. Let me explain what I mean. There are those who believe that, oh, well, they're biracial and they should embrace their whiteness. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Not that they shouldn't know about their heritage,
right?
But they should know all parts of their heritage.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, when they're in your house, they're biracial, but when they're out there, they're black.
Yeah.
If you think I'm lying, explain Colin Kaepernick. Explain Obama. No,
you I'm 100%. My mom is actually mixed. And I'm 100% in agreement. My mom looks white, but she's black, and she knows she's black. And she's been in situations where people think she's white and speak things about black people not knowing she's black. My wife knows what her daughters are. And it's funny because at her school, there's been, me and my brother were just talking about this the other day. There's a woman who accused her of being racist. And it's ironic because my wife's daughters are black, and my wife knows they're black, and my wife understands how the world is going to view them. It's crazy. I have in-laws who may watch Fox News, and one of my biggest things is like, I know they love me. I know they love their grandchildren or, my children, but they have to understand how what they watch impacts their blood now, their blood's lives in a negative way, and how it shapes, how what they watch shapes the view of what the girls they love so much, and that's like, it's cognitive dissonance. They have to come to terms with what they believe and what the real reality is. And so, no, there's no, I am firmly in agreement with it's the one drop, or what is that, Plessy Ferguson? It's the one drop one. So I know what my daughters are, and as they've gotten older, I try to expose them and let them understand that. I tell you, in one of my episodes, I talk about one of my insecurities as a Black man is because of the negative imagery that is of Black men. I get scared that they may look negatively at Black men, and that's a crazy thing to admit, but that's a real fear that I had. And my boy had to pull me up, and he's like, nah, man, like, their first view of a Black man is going to be you. Like, you do your thing and everything will take care of itself. And I really do believe that. Most of my members of my family are darker, so they know what they are. Well, at least my oldest does. My youngest is only 1.5, but my wife knows what they are, knows how the world sees them, and I think that helps her because every decision that she makes when it comes to them is with that in mind. She understands this is her blood now, and she needs to protect them just like a parent. A parent wants to protect their child. So there's no disagreement there. It just is what it is.
Okay. All right. So all right. Now, couple points of order.
Yes, sir.
I'm more of a conservative than I am a tree-hugging liberal. Okay. I enjoy Fox News because it's funny. But the thing of it is, the difference between me and most people is I don't lay, politically speaking, I don't lay my burdens, and this is a problem I have with all Black people. And this is the only time I'll ever generalize in this way. If 96% of Black people are voting democratically down the board, then your vote has no power.
Yeah, you're seceding some of that power. That is true.
Yeah, because it's like this: if I'm smashing, right? If I'm smashing, there's no incentive for me to take you out on town for a nice steak dinner.
No. Yeah, you lose your leverage.
Yeah, so we have no leverage. And then the bad part is Black folks have been so caught up on the vote, they never got taught politics. And in order to understand politics, you have to understand that there's a cash exchange that takes place, via lobbyists and super PACs and regular PACs that Black people are conspicuously missing from. And then when you look at, from a political stance, what happens in this country with every other minority or special interest group, they have people on both sides of the aisle. That's why the NRA will throw everybody a bone and say, oh, bump stocks are bad. But, we will keep these AR-15s rolling.
Yeah.
Keep pushing it on. Or, you look at everything that Obama did. He looked up Hispanics with border control and path to citizenship and all of the other good stuff. And he hooked up the LGBTQ movement with, marriage across the board, marriage equality, the repeal of Clinton's wonderful Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because he's such a liberal. The liberal from Arkansas, okay, and his wife, his wife was a Goldwater girl, but okay,
he plays the game. He plays the game.
He plays it better than most people, and I love him for that. But my whole thing is, we got to make sure that we understand that it's so, for me, it's deep. Like, it's very, very deep. I've got a niece and a nephew who are half white.
Okay.
And I've been telling them for as long as they've been breathing, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black. I don't care what your mama tells you, you're black. Because they're half Irish.
I get it. You're trying to protect them. I get it.
It's not even about protecting them. It's about, listen, When I was a little kid, I think we're about the same age. I might be a little bit older. When I was a kid, there was this Coke commercial with this blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl standing on a hill. It was a grassy hill. And she said, "I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep them company." I thought that was awesome. Unfortunately, when they yelled cut, all them diverse people who came up all went to their respective corners.
Right.
Along with their prejudices.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you can want your kids to be what it is, but I live in a world like I tell my daughters, you can wear whatever you want. That's your right. As an American, you can wear whatever you want. As long as it doesn't come under indecent exposure laws, you're good. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, if you go to Freaknik or some shit like that, they don't respect laws. To put that another way, I could go to the Philadelphia Zoo and wear a steak sweatsuit. And I can do that because it's my right. It may be a little weird, it may be a little disgusting, but it's my right. Now, when I jump into the lion's cage,
the
lions don't give a fuck about my rights.
Right.
And that's the difference. And so, you know, when we raise our kids to be utopian, my whole thing is, even with Fox News ain't the issue. It's your underlying prejudices and what does that say about what's now in your family lineage.
Yeah, and we've talked on a lot of items here, and when I say that protecting, it's making obviously your nieces and nephews aware, but it is protecting to make sure that they understand how the world is going to view them when they jump into that lion's den. It's important for them to know what they are, and when you talk to politics, that's actually that's my thing, because I went to school for public policy. I actually wanted to be United States press secretary. So growing up, I was a huge Bill Clinton fan. I remember being a kid watching on Arsenio Hall.
Sorry.
I know. And as I've gotten older, I realized how I was manipulated and bamboozled. When I really understood, the three strikes and how his policies really negatively impacted family members of mine and friends. So, but
careful, CJ. Careful. Weeze loves Bill Clinton. Mr. Clinton, so, he's our first black president.
And that's the thing. When we talk about politics, it's not like extreme left, extreme right. It's not on some horizontal plane. See it almost as interlocking links, where some people you may actually agree with conservative people or liberal people on different issues. It's not so absolute or static, or you're on this side and I'm on that side. There's a lot that we do have in common, a lot of shared values. I mean, honestly, especially as I've gotten older, I feel like I am probably more in the middle. I mean, I don't want to say more conservative. There's, unfortunately, I think we've associated certain things with certain parties, which may not necessarily be true. Just because I'm a Democrat doesn't mean I'm not conservative or financially responsible. You know what I mean? Just because I'm a Democrat doesn't mean I don't want safe borders or believe that guns should be outlawed or anything like that. There's not absolutes with either, and we've kind of muddied these waters where it does make it us versus them. And I fall victim to it a lot too, because I feel some people are just so extreme with it. It's like, fuck, even if I hate voting for this Democrat, I can't let that other person be in charge. Now, when we talk about monolithic voting, I live in Baltimore, and I've been saying for the longest time, if there's one thing that Baltimore needs to shake up with, it's with our Democratic political machine. I would love to see a Republican run in Baltimore for 4 years just to see what the hell happened. Because I've driven through West Baltimore every day for so many years, and I see those kids growing up with the same shit every single year. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. Why should they vote? It doesn't matter, because you know what? Their life is still the same. Yep. That pain, everything they're going through, that's still the same. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed since the 60s.
Nope.
So I can see why people are apathetic about certain things and not voting and saying, I mean, I don't do it. I always do go out and vote, and I try to encourage people to vote. But at the same time, if I was living in that life, if I had to go through that, why would I be any different? What makes me think that I'd be so special, be any different from what, they're, what they're feeling? And it's sad. And I think too much of us, we don't. Okay. So clearly you may not agree with everything I say, and I may not agree with everything you say, but we easily respect each other. And we can easily try to find how to move a ball forward, and just saying, fuck it, I'm not dealing with you because I don't agree with you. I mean, what the fuck is that?
Bullshit.
And it's we all want the same things. I mean, you got kids, so I know you're a parent. I know your kids love you. I know you love your kids. I can relate to that. And therefore, I'm going to want what's best for you too, you know, and try to figure out how we can get that together, because the pie is a big pie and we should all be able to eat.
Yeah. Now, let me say this to you. I don't think that anyone agrees with everything that somebody else does. You know, when I was a kid, I was fascinated by shit that was like beyond my years of comprehension. When I came into the entertainment industry, there were a lot of things that I learned that I didn't understand at the time. When I was a kid, that later made sense to me as to why I catch shit. With cartoons, like cartoons are made for children, but they have what's called safe spots for parents. In other words, jokes that are so over the head of the child that the adult gets entertained as well. So they have to suffer through this bullshit.
Right.
And one of my favorite cartoons growing up was a show called Garfield and Friends.
Okay, I remember.
And my favorite characters on Garfield and Friends, aside from Garfield, because I mean it was his show and he was that dude. I fucks with Garfield real hard. It's like on so many levels.
I was more Heathcliff, but I get it, man.
No, Heathcliff is who I was when I came home. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you have to go fucking, like, you can mind your business.
Yeah, he was wild out.
Here come the goddamn alley cat. So now I got to fight. Now I got to take off goddamn, I got to take off like Michael Jackson in 1987's Bad music video. I got to take off my tortoiseshell glasses. Now I got to throw hands and shit and dance.
I like the Heathcliff, man. But go ahead. So Garfield.
But anyway, I love Normal.
No, wow.
Let me break down Normal. Normal, like most people don't realize, Normal's a dude.
Man, you're gonna have me Google stuff now.
No, Normal's a dude. Like, people believe that Normal's a girl. Normal's not a girl. Normal's a dude. But Normal, I love Normal because Normal was to me, the way I read it, Normal was the type of dude who just wanted to get along. And he realized that survival depended on how cute he was. So he was going to be everything Garfield wasn't. I'm Normal. I'm the world's cutest kitty cat. So his eyelashes were curled a certain way. He bottled up. He played with little yarn and shit. You see what I'm saying?
And
like Normal.
Did you catch that as a kid? Because I'm reading right now, and damn if you ain't right. Like, I always thought Normal was a girl.
Everybody thinks Normal's a girl. That's how they slide this shit in. But Normal is who we try to be in society to be accepted by the masses. Garfield didn't give a fuck about that. I hate Mondays. I'm going to eat lasagna. I don't give a fuck you just got paid. Go make me some goddamn lasagna. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a part of, like, we're a lot of us are riding the fence between Garfield and Normal, but let me break this shit down thoroughly.
Okay.
Then you had these motherfuckers who came later on and shit. You had Binky the Clown, who I fucking loved. Because Binky the Clown didn't give a fuck. He was going to entertain whether you wanted to hear the shit or not. Binky the Clown to me is like Black Youngster and all these fucking coon trap rappers out here. You know, like, you don't want to hear this shit. It's vibrating through your fucking speakers. You just trying to rest. And here comes this damn clown buck dancing and acting, wants you to be happy. Hey, kids!
Right.
Then you have the best thing about Garfield ever. And it's not Odie, and it's not John Arbuckle. It's the fucking Buddy Bears.
Oh, my God, man. You're really making me, you really are a Garfield connoisseur, and you're making me think about this.
Bro, the Buddy Bears. What's the first thing out their mouth? Oh, we are the Buddy Bears. We always get along. We'll happy do a sing and dance and do a little song. If you ever disagree, it means that you are wrong. Oh, we are the Buddy Bears. We always get along. And there's a whole lot of Buddy Bear-ass Negroes out here who just want to get along. Who, you know what I'm saying? Like, in my career in the broadcast and entertainment industry, they would pull me to the side and be like, just don't argue.
Right. Don't be too aggressive.
Don't be too abrasive. You're rubbing people the wrong way. That to me is the same rhetoric as when your parents tell you, oh, you know, that suspension in third grade is going to ruin your permanent record.
Right.
Your permanent record right now.
What record? Yeah. I talk to my wife about that all the time.
Right, because what you're doing is you're indoctrinating children. You're indoctrinating children with this behavior of conformity. You know?
I'm going to really go back and look at Garfield now with my daughter and just take it from the perspective that you talked about, because As a kid, I'm not really paying attention to half of that. But there is messaging that's put in there, and that's true because there's certain shows I don't like my daughter watching, like Ponytails or something like that, or My Little Pony, I think it was called, because there's messaging of how they're trying to say what girls and women are supposed to be like.
Yeah, I got an issue with that. My daughters don't have no shopping carts. My daughters ain't got no wedding dresses.
See, yeah. My wife and I are the same way with that. We don't want them to be stereotyped in what the world is trying to tell them to be as women.
No cooking sets unless they want them, because I love to cook, so I don't really take that a gender exclusive thing. But when you're giving me Barbie's pink kitchen set, then we got a problem.
Right. And I even named my youngest daughter Charlie because it is a gender neutral name. And people are like, I named her also after my grandfather. Like, is it stand short for Charlotte or something like that? I'm like, no, it's Charlie. They're like, it's a boy's name. I'm like, no, it's Charlie. It's fine. She has a dope name. But that's cool. There is. So Garfield. So why were we on Garfield though?
Yeah, really. That's the thing about this show. It'll go anywhere. But the thing is, man,
I really fell into that one.
Yeah, a lady's trapped so beautifully.
You did. You got me.
I'm gonna get in this hole. Let me just. I'll put the dirt on top of myself, Dave. So let's talk about your experience with other Black podcasters.
Here we go.
Let's talk about it. Like, I know the story, but I want the listeners to understand the story. I'm gonna let you rock. I'm gonna shut my mouth. Go ahead.
I appreciate it because I literally just finished my episode last night talking about this. I was up to like 1 o'clock finishing it, and I'm pretty excited about it. So yeah, I was as I said earlier, I never really did any social media, but I knew when I started the podcast, I had to get on social media to kind of like brand myself and get my name out. So I joined Facebook, and Facebook has all these different groups. So one of the groups, and I joined a bunch of different podcast groups. And one of the groups that I joined was called Black Podcasters United. And I joined that group because I thought, I loved the concept of it. It seemed like a bunch of different Black podcasters who were really supporting each other. And they even say in their rules that we're here to support each other. We may not always agree with each other, but we are a diverse group with different thoughts, and we're going to challenge each other and show our love and rah, rah. And so I was like, yeah, I'm down with that. And quite honestly, some of the conversations were kind of like trivial, but some of the conversations were good. And I did feel like I got more, at least from kind of camaraderie from that group than some of the other podcast groups that I were in that weren't as Black, so to speak. So I joined this group, and for a couple months, it was kind of like, what do you call it? The buddy bears. Everything was getting along, everybody's like, oh, we're here to get along, and everything was fine. And people say they want to hear your truth, and, they'll like it if they agree with it. But when something comes along that they don't like, all of a sudden shit changes. So I was in the group, and I was cool with the admins and everything. And I was working on my podcast that sometimes I didn't post in there. And I was working on my podcast called Remember Vanessa. And Remember Vanessa was a podcast inspired by the Me Too movement. I hear a lot of people in the Me Too movement. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, but there's what the women feel. There's men who are scared to speak. And I wanted to basically look at my actions as a male over the course of my life and see how I've contributed to rape culture. So I went and started reading up on what rape culture is, and I learned a lot. And I started just assessing my actions. And I had this great idea to introduce the episode with a chapter in this book called Makes Me Want to Holler. It's this chapter called Trains. It was by Nathan McCall. This book was a big deal in the 90s. It's about this Black kid from Southern Virginia who was in gangs, who was in jail, and he kind of recovered his life and became like a reporter for the Washington Post. And it was a best-selling book. My mom got it for me because she just saw this Black man who was successful, and she probably thought, here, this is a good role model for you, because I didn't grow up with my father. So when I read the book and I read this chapter, I thought this chapter was cool. Now I'm 38 and going back to this chapter to reread it, and I'm realizing, holy shit, he's what they call trains, which is a bunch of guys teaming up on a girl, was really gang rape. And it blew my mind because I didn't realize at the age of 17 what I was reading. And here I am, 21 years later, I'm like, wow. And so there's some of that message. Like, I was just really sick at that age, but a lot of the stuff I was listening to at that time was like Snoop, and these are and Ghetto Boys, and that was kind of part of the culture. So it seemed kind of normalized. So I said, all right, man, I'm going to go ahead and do this episode, and I'm going to have my wife read this caption from this book, and then I'll just get into my episode. And it was a really tough episode because it was very graphic, and I shared a lot of stories, things that I did that I'm not necessarily proud of, but I felt for us to understand what men are sometimes thinking in these situations, a man has to be honest about what he was thinking. Because we want to be able to stop this type of culture. And I realized how I contributed to the culture. And I wasn't putting the blame on music or the blame on books or the blame on my friends, but they were contributing factors because I didn't have a father every day when I came home telling me, like, this is what you need to be doing. This is how you should be acting. But I did have a lot of negative influences through music or TV or whatever that were taking over more bandwidth in my mind than the positive. So it's contributing factors. In the end, I was still responsible. Long story short, put the podcast episode out and never posted it in that Facebook group. The Facebook group somehow got wind of it, blocked me from the group, kicked me out the group. And when I asked them why they kicked me out, they basically said, well, apparently some women have heard this podcast and said that you were creating an unsafe place for women in the group. And I was like, word? Like, who was it? What's going on? Why don't we talk about it? They're like, well, there's nothing to talk about. You're kicked out. And it was just it really had me pissed off because I do volunteering on the side. There's a lot about me that they don't know. And they actually have heard on my other episodes. So they have context of who I am as a person, but for them to have maybe a few small, population of people within that group make such a stink about somebody being very honest, not being judgmental, not being dismissive towards other, but just being honestly looking at himself and admitting that he was wrong and trying to say, this is what we should be doing. This is one way to help fix this problem. It's not the only solution, but it's a piece. And for them to kick me out, there was nothing united about it. It's like they're this extreme liberal left part of society that's Black, and they think, everything should be how they say that, and they don't realize the context as to why people are the way they are. Things don't just happen in a vacuum. There's a reason that somebody gets to a certain point to create some type of action. And so I'm trying to explain the why, because I want to stop it. Just to say, don't do that, that's bad, doesn't necessarily mean the kid's not going to do it. They don't understand it, So I was trying to get deeper. And they were like, nah, we ain't having it. And they kicked me out. And so I was just like, I was mad at first, but then I just kind of used that, rechanneled my anger into something positive. And I think I got a good episode that's going to be coming out soon.
Yeah. It always sucks when you're dealing with closed-minded morons. I'm going to be honest, as a pioneer in this thing, Black or white, nobody in that group is that damn significant. Like, they're not in the conversation. They don't have, hundreds of thousands of downloads. They don't have anything to show for it. They're just in that group, so they're kicking you out. And guess what's going to happen?
What?
Not a damn thing.
Right.
New Edition kicked out Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown still outsold him.
Yeah. Bobby was the shit, man. And Bobby was the shit too. Bobby, yeah. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. I won't lie. I did take it a little personal, and that's just like that's a kind of a character flaw with me, that sometimes I internalize things and I'm like, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. You know what I mean? I'm just being Garfield. I'm just doing what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing. And no matter what, I know I'm speaking truth. I know my intentions are pure. They're not with malice. And so long as I continue to do that, and I just have to be a positive role model for my family, and continue to do what's right. And it's not going to hurt me. It's going to hurt them more than me, to be very honest. Because I did think I added something to that group that was a little different. I get it. I'm a little different. But just to shut me out like that, they seem to think that there's something that they're not. And I hope they're able to correct that in their lives.
So where can people find you? What do you want people to know about you? What's your mission so we can wrap this thing up?
Like I said earlier, you can go to Normalized Podcast. That's one word, normalizedpodcast.com. You can catch all my episodes. I'll be releasing episode 17, The Brave, this week. You can find my blog postings. You can find where I am in the media. So if I've done an interview like I'm doing right now, that'll be posted up there. And you can see what I'm also doing out in the community. So I'm not just talking on a podcast. I've gone out and I've spoken to prison inmates who are getting college degrees. I go out and I speak at universities. I do a lot of different things to spread this word, because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to show a different side of Black people, a normal side of Black people. I'm trying to just improve the world. And I'm not really sure where this journey is going, but it's brought me to your steps, which has been a great thing, a great opportunity for me. So I'm going to continue to ride this wave, focus on people who can really help me and teach me and guide me through the process, and just continue to do what I do. I've found my voice, I found my calling, so I'm loving it. I'm just going to keep doing it, man. So normalizedpodcast.com.
That's what it is. CJ, thank you for being open, bro. Thank you for being here. And
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate the opportunity. Hey, and thanks for teaching me about Garfield, man.
Hey,
me and my daughter about to go get it in.
Bro, let me tell you something. Watch Garfield, man, and I'm gonna fuck your head up with some other shit later on.
Okay, I can't wait. Actually, I'm kind of like, oh shit, I didn't know Dave was this deep. Okay.
Yeah, see, people just think all I am is a mohawk and a loud voice. Like, no, I'm smart too.
I'm like, shit, man, preach. I'm about to go to church. All right, man, I appreciate it.